Hi, this is Mato. Welcome to my online chess lecture. In this video I will show you a game between Wenjun and Yu Yangyi. This is a game from the Chinese Championship 2021. Wenjun had white pieces and she started with e4. Yu Yangyi played e5. Knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, the Italian game. Knight to f6, two knights defense, d3, bishop to e7, knight to c3, d6, a4, castling h3, preventing bishop to g4 and also knight to g4. Bishop to e6, castling black to move. Yu Yangyi played knight takes on e4, temporarily sacrificing the knight. Knight takes on e4, let's take it back. If bishop takes on e6, then knight takes on c3. So we have knight takes knight, d5, forking two pieces. Knight from e to g5, d takes on c4, knight takes on e6, f takes on e6, d takes on c4, queen takes queen, rook takes queen. Black to move. Perhaps rook from a to d8, fighting for the open file, was expected. Bishop to c5 was played. Perhaps trying to discourage white from playing bishop to e3, but Wenjun played bishop to e3 anyway. Bishop takes bishop, pawn takes bishop. Both players have 3 pawn islands and damaged pawn structure, but white stands slightly better. h6, preventing knight to g5. Rook to d7, invading the 7th rank. Rook to f7, white to move, rook takes rook. If rook from a to d1, then rook from a to f8. So we have rook takes rook, king takes rook, white to move. Rook to d1, looks like the most natural move. Rook to f1 was played. If rook to d1, then king to f6 after e4, rook to d8, rook takes rook, knight takes rook, c5. White stands slightly better, but is it enough to win? Back to our game. Rook to f1, black to move. King to e8 was played. King to e7 seems like a better move. King to e8, king to f2, and now king to e7, king to e2, rook to f8, rook to b1 intending b4, a5, c3, b6, king to d3. White has a more active position, so Yu Yangyi made a plan to sacrifice the pawn on e5 in order to activate his rook. Knight to b8, allowing white to play knight takes pawn on e5, and this is what happened. Rook to f2. c5, b takes on c5, g4. Black to move. Yu Yangyi played knight to d7. Surely he considered rook to h2 and then, like this continuation, rook to f1. And if now rook takes pawn, then check, and after king to d6, king to e4. Black has a very uncomfortable position. Back to our game. Also, if black does nothing, then white improves her position even more. Knight to d7, but this is allowing white to play knight to c6 and create a passed pawn. So we have knight to c6 check, king to d6, knight takes on a5, creating a passed pawn. White stands better. Knight to b6, knight to c4, king to c6, a5. This is better than knight takes on b6, because then c takes on b6. a5, knight takes on c4, king takes on c4, rook to e2, a6, king to b6, rook to a1, king to a7, white to move. Instead of doing something about the b pawn, rook to a5. If b4, this would allow black some counterplay like this. C takes on b4, c takes on b4, rook takes pawn on e3. Black is fighting back. So we have rook to a5, rook takes on b2, rook takes on c5, king to b6. If king takes on a6, then rook takes on c7 and white wins. King to b6, rook to e5, king takes on a6, rook takes pawn, check, king to b7, h4, very precise. If rook to g6, then rook to h2. White is still better, but the game continuation is much better, because if now rook to h2, then h5, and then rook to g6, back to our game. So in this position we have rook to a2, king to d3, rook to f2, rook to g6, rook to f7, e4, c6, e5, king to b6, king to e4, king to c5. White to move, h5, e6 also wins. But Wenjun was not in a hurry. Her lunch was not ready yet. She played h5, king to b5, rook to d6, king to c5. Of course, if king goes to capture the pawn, then rook takes on c6, check. King to c5, rook to d8, preparing the red carpet for the e-pawn. Rook to e7, there is more than one way to win. Rook to d4 was played, intending king to f5 in some variations. King to b5, king to f5, c5, rook to d1, rook to f7, king to e6, rook to a7, king to d6, king to c4. If check, then king to d5. White wins in this variation too. Back to our game. King to c4, e6, rook to a6 check, king to d7, rook to a7 check, king to e8, king takes on c3, e7, rook to a2, king to d7, and in this position Yu Yangyi resigned in view of this continuation. Check, king to e6, check, rook to d6, rook to a8, rook to d8, rook takes rook, pawn takes rook, queen. And I guess we can stop here. Excellent endgame play by Wenjun. Yu Yangyi lost this game, but he won the Chinese Championship 2021. So, congratulations to both players. What do you think of this game? And that is all. I hope that you enjoyed watching this video. I wish you good luck with your chess, and bye for now.